Hi everyone, welcome back for another WSQ. Today we're going to be looking at politics in the Gilded Age. Political corruption is going to be really common in the late 1800s leading into the early 1900s. And it's going to prompt a lot of reformers or people who want to change to start fighting for changes to make the government more accountable and honest to the American people. As you watch the video, answer the guided questions provided on your WSQ sheet. You may need to pause or rewatch the video in order to answer the guided questions. When the video ends, summarize the main points of the video in paragraph form, making sure that you use the specific vocabulary that's given to you on your WSQ sheet. Then I want you to finish by asking one question. This can be something you're still confused about, a general question about a concept or something that was said or explained, or a discussion question for the class, something that we could have a talk about while we're in class together. The essential question of this WSQ is going to be, how did economic opportunities during the Gilded Age increase for some individuals and groups, but decrease for others? And then Spartan historians will analyze the impact of Gilded Age politics on the American identity at the turn of the century and understand the influence of politics on American and immigrant life. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the populist movement. There's three phases to the populist movement that started with the National Grange. During the late 1800s, crop prices, or the prices of produce, started to fall, and farmers fell into a lot of debt, but trying to make new equipment to make more product to sell. The idea is if you are able to make more product and sell more product, then you'll make more money. However, when supply is high, the cost of the price is going to be very low, okay? So the oversupply of farm products caused prices to fall even farther. So the more you make of something, the less it's going to cost because there's just so much of it. Farmers start organizing to provide aid and assistance to individual farmers. They created cooperatives, right? And a cooperative is when local groups merge together to create organizations. This cooperative became known nationally as the National Grange. The entire goal of the National Grange was to assist farmers and provide them in aid in any way that they possibly could. They quickly realized, though, that in order to aid farmers most, they're going to need to campaign for political reforms and changes that would benefit farmers. The Grange's first victory is to regulate railroad rates in Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. Railroads and big businesses were the main groups that were hurting farmers. Railroads started raising the rate for farmers as opposed to larger businesses that would pay them more money. Railroads challenged the Grange movement in court, which led to two different Supreme Court cases. Munn versus Illinois ordered that the state legislatures have the right to regulate business that involves public interest, and the public interest being the interest of the farmers. Wabash versus Illinois declared that the federal government has the right to regulate railroad traffic across state borders. Wabash versus Illinois ends up leading to the creation of the Interstate Commerce Act that requires that all railroad rates be fair for all customers by requiring the rates to be reasonable and just, meaning that they couldn't charge farmers something completely different than they were charging big businesses. They wanted the government to be fair for all people. The Interstate Commerce Act also creates an organization called the Interstate Commerce Commission, and the Interstate Commerce Commission oversees the law of the Interstate Commerce Act, but it doesn't give them the right to enforce the law, only to oversee the law. After the Grange, the farmers come together to create an alliance, right? Because they've come together more than one, they create an alliance, right? So the second movement is the Farmers Alliance. They combine together because together they feel like they can help farmers better. And so the alliance movement was the first time in which the farmers were really getting political and started lobbying the government for change. In the South, the Southern Alliance only allows white farmers. African American farmers who are tenant farmers and sharecroppers are going to have to form their own alliance to fight the prejudice of being African American. The Farmers Alliance wants to expand the money supply. Their whole idea is, well, if there's not enough money, why don't we give more money so that they can buy our products? So the U.S. government had switched to the gold standard in 1873, meaning that every dollar bill was backed up by a certain amount of gold. The money, the dollar bills in circulation, had to match the amount of gold in the treasury. The gold is what gave the dollars their value and their worth. The Farmers Alliance, however, wanted to expand the money supply by linking the dollar bill, the worth of the dollar bill, back to gold and silver. The idea was that if we add silver to the money supply, that'll make the dollar worth more. But adding silver doesn't have that much of an impact on the money supply overall. Alliance members start to become really politically active, and they have a lot of success in getting officials into office. So they decide to form their own party called the Populist Party. Okay, and so they start their own political party. It supports everything that the National Grange and the Farmers Alliance wanted, including a graduated income tax, meaning that the poor would pay less taxes than the rich. They wanted to regulate the banks because they thought that the banks were unfairly foreclosing on their farms, and also advocated for government ownership of the railroad, which would allow for more fair rates and cheaper rates for farmers. The main thing that the Populist Party wanted, though, was the free and unlimited coinage of silver, because they felt like that would increase the money supply. The Populist Party is able to win a lot of seats in Congress, and they mainly represent farmers. In 1893, one of the leading railroad companies failed, however, leading to a panic. Right? A panic is a national depression, an economic depression. During the panic, investors started pulling out of the stock market, which caused a depression economically. The Sherman Silver Purchase Act of 1890 had required the government to pay for silver purchases with paper money, right? And silver decreased in value so much that people rushed to exchange their paper money for gold instead. The Republicans in the election of 1896 nominated William McKinley. He was pro-gold. He wanted to support businesses, whereas Democrats nominated William Jennings Bryan, who was pro-silver and gold. President Cleveland had lost his popularity with the Panic of 1893. Nobody wanted him to be president anymore. The populists were pulling for William Jennings Bryan because he was pro-silver. The populist politics in general in the election of 1896 were mainly designed to represent the popular interest of the people rather than special interest groups, right? It's this idea of using emotional appeals and appealing to people and individual groups based on what they like rather than on the larger businesses or other organizations. Political machines are also going to be really active in the late 1800s. Political machines are an informal group of politicians that control the local government. So they're mainly city officials, mayors, and governors. And they often resorted to corruption in order to solve society's problems, like the poor. They used illegal tactics. They said that, well, we'll give you this if you vote for us. They'll bribe other leaders for what they wanted in order to maintain control. They did things illegally and behind people's backs. The main thing that they did and are known for is gaining immigrants' votes by helping them gain citizenship, giving them aid when they came into the country, and helping them find jobs. The most notorious of all of these political machines is Tammany Hall and William Marcy Tweed. In this picture, you can see William Marcy Tweed is behind the basket. On the posters on the wall, it says, "Fat offices, diamonds, and palaces," for those that count out the anti-Tammany tickets, meaning that anybody who took out the anti-Tammany ticket. During the late 1890s, too, there's a lot of corruption on a federal level. President Ulysses S. Grant, who had been president after the Civil War, had some scandals occur while he was president. The Union Pacific Railroad had set up a construction company as part of the Transcontinental Railroad called Credit Mobilier. And this company charged the American public $23 million more than it actually cost to build it. And all of that $23 million went straight to the directors and the stockholders of the company. Another scandal was called the Whiskey Ring Scandal, in which the Treasury Secretary of Ulysses S. Grant had diverted the tax collections off of whiskey into private accounts. And the whiskey producers paid bribes to the government in exchange for the money that had been diverted from the liquor taxes. The second political major federal corruption scandal was under Rutherford B. Hayes. He had issued an executive order that prohibited government employees from managing political parties or campaigns. Roscoe Conkling, a political boss and a Republican, didn't want the spoils system to take place because the spoils system helped him, because if he had put people in office that supported major things that he wanted, he would get money and also would benefit economically and politically. He wanted to continue the spoils system, so Conkling created a group known as the Stalwarts. Hayes doesn't end up running for a second term, and so Republicans are going to nominate James Garfield. Under Garfield, he wins the election, but he's shot by Charles Guiteau because he had denied Charles Guiteau a job in his administration. So Vice President Chester Arthur has to take over, and he says, we're getting rid of the spoils system. This is why Garfield died. And so he passes the Pendleton Civil Service Act that said that promotions must be based on merit, meaning that they earned the job rather than on the political connections or any sort of donations that are given. However, the Pendleton Civil Service Act is not extremely helpful because it only applies to about 10% of the federal government, not any of the states. However, it is the first step in trying to reduce corruption. As you watch the video, make sure that you answer the guided questions provided. You may need to pause or rewatch the video in order to answer the guided questions. When the video ends, summarize the main points of the video in paragraph form using the specific vocabulary given to you on the WSQ sheet. Then I want you to finish by asking one question, something you're either still confused about, a general question, or a discussion question for the class that would spark some sort of conversation. Thanks for joining me for this video, and we'll see you in class.